In this discussion, we are going to look at the Maqasid al-Shari'ah. Maqasid means objectives, purposes, the intents. Sharia, of course, the Islamic way of life, as revealed in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Maqasid Sharia refers to those higher objectives, the aims, the goals that Sharia tries to achieve in human society. Scholars have looked very carefully at most of the injunctions of the Quran and Sunnah, and what they consistently find is that all injunctions seem to try and achieve two specific objectives: the accruing of benefit and the removing of harm. Traditionally, this is called Jalbul Masaleh, the improving, the accruing of good in society, and Dar'ul Mafasid, the removing of mafsada, of harm, of suffering, or of evil. However, as some scholars such as Al-Iz bin Abdul Salam has pointed out, that since maslaha is about accruing benefits, but mafsada, removing harm, is also for the attainment of benefits, then he says the maqasid of Sharia could easily be explained. The objective of Sharia is about accruing maslaha. When we look at the way scholars discuss this topic, we find, unlike in usul, where the concern is more with the tools of thought and the methodology of using qiyas and ijma and these other tools, in the maqasid of Sharia, there's a more direct relationship with the text of the Quran and Sunnah to try and understand and appreciate the specific objectives. So while there's an agreement that Sharia is interested in bringing benefit to mankind in this world and in the hereafter, the subject is concerned with identifying specifically what are these benefits, how are they to be classified, and how are they to be ranked according to priority. So the maqasid of Sharia are those good ends, good benefits that the law tries to realize by blocking certain means or by opening certain means. The maqasid of Sharia is another word sometimes used for maqasid, is therefore masalih or maslaha, benefits. Some, however, who use the word maqasid refer to the ultimate objectives of justice, of compassion as the maqasid, and those means that achieve this in society, those more specific benefits as the masalih or maslaha. Some scholars, however, use these terms interchangeably. The maslaha or maqasid have been divided according to various criteria. The traditional way scholars have often divided the maqasid or the objectives of Sharia according to their priority and importance has been into three major categories: the daruriyat, hajiyat, and tahsiniyat. The daruriyat meaning those vital necessities usually essential for survival. The hajiyat meaning those important needs that are essential for protecting the vital necessities, but not as critical to survival as the daruriyat. And lastly, those desirables, the embellishments, the luxuries of life. These are important maqasid because it's when people have reached a level of luxury and comfort that they are usually able to start taking care of other people who are going through difficulties. So all these are part of the maqasid and objectives of Sharia, but some are more critical than others. These maqasid are further divided into various aspects of life of a community. And so you find the maqasid or the daruriyat, for example, being divided into 5 or 6 or 7 depending on the scholars. So they would consider the protection of religion as a maqasid, hifdhuddin, the protection of the intellect, the protection of wealth and property, the protection of lineage or family or offspring, the protection of life as all maqasid objectives of Sharia. There is no textually specified number of maqasid. There's no divine way of classifying them. So scholars have come up with various ways and numbers of maqasid, and scholars such as Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shatibi actually consider there to be no limit to the number of maqasid. If one looks through the Quran, one finds social cohesion and unity as a maqasid of Sharia. Brotherhood as another objective or maqasid of Sharia. Justice, ease, facilitation, magnanimity, cooperation, working together as a group, as we've said earlier, social cohesion, education, environmental protection, protection of the rights of other creatures, as all part of the objectives of Sharia, for which Allah has given various injunctions in the Quran, and we find these in the Sunnah. When therefore it comes to the discussion on the maqasid of Sharia, scholars have differed on the level of certainty when it comes to identifying these maqasid. They definitely conclude that maqasid is not a valid maqasid if it doesn't lead to the fulfillment of maslahah, of benefit, or the avoidance of mischief and harm. And so they generally classify maqasid the way they classify maslahah. As we said, some use these terms interchangeably. That some of the maqasid are mu'tabara, that is textually accredited. They are clear texts to support these. The concept of justice is not a probable objective of Sharia. It is as certain an objective of Sharia as is the prohibition of alcohol, for example, or the respect due to parents. Some maqasid therefore are based on clear text. Some maqasid are not based on clear text, but they are supported by the general text of goodness, of justice, for example. So those are masaleh or maqasid that are mursala. They are not specifically stated in the text, but they are supported by the general benefit that they bring. At the same time, some are mulga. They are discredited because they contradict text. What scholars have tried to do, therefore, to reduce abuse of the field of maqasid is to actually come up with criteria to ensure that something is a maqasid. They want to be sure that before something is recognized as a maqasid or as a maslahah, that it is really a benefit, not a harm, that it is benefit to a generality, not just to an individual or to a group, but harmful to others, and that it doesn't contradict clear text of the Quran and Sunnah. In other words, we do not want somebody claiming that injustice is a maqasid when the text actually contradicts that and puts justice as being the maqasid. So all this criteria is a way scholars use to maximize the certainty with which they are able to identify and articulate the reasons behind various injunctions in the Quran and Sunnah, as a way of ensuring that the objectives are certainly the objectives of the lawgiver or the objectives intended by the Prophet, peace be upon him, for a particular legislation, and to avoid people coming with arbitrary ways of claiming certain things to be objectives of Sharia which really are not or may go contrary to the text itself.